There's been a disturbing new twist in the state's coronavirus outbreak. Authorities say for the first time, the highly infectious Indian strain known as the Delta variant has been detected in Victoria's community, and its source is not yet known. We've recorded 4 new cases of COVID-19. That brings the state's outbreak to 64. About 49,000 people have been tested in the past 24 hours, meaning since Monday last week, 470,000 people have had the swab. But it's what genomic testing has found that has health experts most concerned. A number of cases called the West Melbourne cluster have been infected with the Delta strain that's more infectious than what we've seen so far in this outbreak. Richard Willingham begins our coverage.
A new front has opened up in Melbourne's battle with COVID-19. This primary school is one of the main targets.
We've got disturbing news overnight.
The Delta strain of the Indian variant that's savaging South Asia has been found in Melbourne. Genomic testing shows a West Melbourne family of 4 have it. One is a grade 5 student at North Melbourne Primary School who was believed to have passed it on to a classmate. That child's parents now have the virus, representing 3 of today's new cases. A 4th new case was already in isolation and is a primary contact of the Port Melbourne cluster. Jervis Bay, New South Wales is an area of concern. The family spent 5 days there from May 19 before returning to Melbourne.
We do need to understand where it's come from, and that means that there are unidentified upstream cases. Whether they are in Victoria or elsewhere is to be determined.
In Victoria, 10 people have been able to quarantine at home or in hospital in the last 2 months, but all have tested negative. There's also other possible leads.
You might remember the gentleman from New South Wales, probably about 6 weeks ago now. That was the Delta variant.
There are more than 300 close contacts linked to North Melbourne Primary School. 70% have come back negative so far. Does this Delta variant set us back?
Oh no, I think we review as we always have, based on what else emerges.
Last night, 2 of the so-called fleeting transmissions were reclassified as negative. One of those caused businesses to shut in Anglesey.
There was a sense of anger amongst the business community. Their costs that they've incurred should be 100% compensated.
Surely Victorians deserve some easing of restrictions in line with that. Instead, we've got business as usual.
We did not make a decision about where we were with the entire outbreak based on these 2 cases alone.
There are still 8 cases of transmission between unknown parties, but the outlook is sunnier with new cases already in isolation.
I think we're in a really good position now. 0 numbers outside of quarantine. That's what we're hoping for.
I think it depends on the next few days as to whether these 2 families have caused new chains of transmission.
The messaging about how contagious this virus is and the rationale for the lockdown has been a bit confusing for some this week, with authorities accused of scaremongering, a charge it denies. There's also growing frustration about this 4th lockdown and why Melbourne is here once again. Richard Willingham, ABC News, Melbourne.
Well, Victoria is once again a state divided by COVID restrictions after regulations relaxed in regional areas today, but not in Greater Melbourne. Margaret Paul joins me now. Margaret, how are the rules being enforced?
Well, Mary, it's another Friday night in Melbourne unlike any other. There's no one wearing a footy scarf heading off to the game, no one wearing a suit heading off for after-work drinks. The streets that are normally busy are pretty quiet around us here tonight. Friday night in Melbourne is the domain of the delivery driver and of those people who are out for the 5 permitted reasons. Now, police will be out monitoring that this weekend, making sure that people are only going out of their homes for those 5 permitted reasons and definitely not heading to regional Victoria from Greater Melbourne. People in Melbourne are being reminded that we are only allowed to go within 10 kilometres of our home for those 5 permitted reasons. There are also about 160 AFP members. They're enforcing people who are supposed to be isolating. So they're just doing door knocks and checking that people are where they said they'd be. So another weekend in Melbourne, but it won't be like a normal weekend. I hope you've got a good book, Mary.
I'll try to get one. Thanks, Margaret. So, regional residents are back in restaurants, religious gatherings and retail strips. But there are strict capacity rules and QR code check-ins will be mandatory, even for a quick visit to the shops. Dana Morse has the story.
Regional Victorians wasted no time tasting freedom this morning.
It's good to get the mask off. Got to carry it with you in case you can't socially distance. But, it's great to have the freedom of being able to talk to people without it on.
Up here we cop the same sort of punishments, if you like, that Melbourne does, and I don't think we should.
Business was blooming in Wodonga.
Having the shop front open is just makes us a little bit busier, and we love being open and having the shop open.
But while cafes were making the most of the renewed buzz, they won't be able to serve everyone. Along with their QR code check-in, customers now have to provide ID with out-of-towners to be sent packing.
So yeah, we've had a customer come in this morning from Melbourne who we turned away straight away.
Some businesses are still stuck in lockdown limbo, with no sign of indoor gyms being able to open anytime soon.
There's just absolutely no reason, we need to be reopened.
And yesterday's announcement that federal assistance will be limited to Melbourne residents is weighing heavily here.
We're considered a hotspot enough to be closed. We're not eligible for any of the funding that's now become available, which isn't really logical.
While regional Victoria is taking a big step forward to COVID normal, restrictions have only slightly eased in Greater Melbourne, with senior school students able to get back in the classroom from today. That's a relief for Year 12 students with important tests coming up.
It's not horrible, it's not the best thing, but it's entirely manageable. Even if I was supposed to do it for a long period of time, I reckon I would still be able to manage.
But his younger brothers will be stuck doing remote learning for some time to come. Dana Morse, ABC News.